We're back now with a rare glimpse into the First Lady's life. The Amazon-produced film Melania, 20 Days to History, hitting theaters across the country today. And our very own Chloe Malas was at the premiere last night in Washington. Chloe, you were one of the few people who have actually seen this film. So how was it? And talk to me about some of the things that you did when you were there.
I mean, first of all, it was a fascinating glimpse into seeing what is her life like, not only here in New York City at her penthouse just a few blocks away here from Rockefeller Center, where we are right now, to life at Mar-a-Lago.
Something is leaking from inside the White House, and it has officials scrambling behind closed doors. Crew members from Melania's high-profile movie are now breaking their silence, and what they're revealing has reportedly sent shockwaves through the West Wing.
Melania Trump, there's Nicki Minaj there at the film, and one of the film's producers with me, Mark Beckman, is here, back with us. Mark, great to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How was the opening weekend? And tell us how audiences are responding. I know you've been dealing with lots of liberal backlash. They were trying to kill the film. Did it work?
We can't do it. The First Lady is taking on Hollywood, Maria. We are, as you said, the #1 highest opening for a documentary in 14 years. So she's crushing it, and I'm proud of her. It's well-deserved.
Emergency meetings, phone lines burning, damage control in overdrive. What did they see on set that was never meant to reach the public? And why is everyone suddenly so desperate to contain it? In this video, we dive into the leak that triggered full-blown panic at the highest level of power. Amazon's documentary about First Lady Melania Trump has finally arrived in cinemas, and early reactions suggest that while the trailer may have sparked curiosity, the film itself falls considerably short of expectations. The documentary, titled Melania, promises viewers an intimate glimpse into the First Lady's life during the 20 days leading up to her husband's second inauguration in January 2025. However, those who have made the journey to see it in theaters are discovering that the reality doesn't quite match the promise. The trailer for the documentary is admittedly compelling. It features intriguing moments that immediately grab attention, including a scene where Melania stands ready to walk onto the inauguration balcony and mutters to herself, "Here we go again." There's also a fascinating exchange between her and the president, where she addresses him formally as Mr. President, congratulating him, and when he asks if she watched something, she flatly responds that she did not, and will just catch it on the news later. These glimpses suggested a documentary that might offer genuine insight into one of the most enigmatic figures in American politics, and a marriage that has long fascinated observers. Unfortunately, according to critics who have seen the full film, these trailer moments represent the most interesting content on offer. The actual documentary has been described as surprisingly dull, failing to deliver on the intrigue promised by its marketing materials. Rather than providing meaningful insight into Melania Trump's thoughts, motivations, or experiences, the film largely consists of watching a wealthy woman go about relatively mundane tasks associated with preparing for her return to the White House. A significant portion of the runtime is devoted to scenes of the First Lady selecting china patterns and other decorative items for the White House. There are extended sequences showing her concerns about seemingly minor details, such as the width of the hatband she'll wear to the inauguration ceremony. Viewers are treated to numerous shots of Melania getting in and out of limousines, boarding private jets, and politely thanking various staff members and officials. These scenes may appeal to those interested in the minutiae of high society preparation and protocol, but they don't add up to particularly gripping cinema. One of the main draws for many potential viewers was the opportunity to observe the dynamic between Donald and Melania Trump. Their marriage has been the subject of endless speculation and analysis, with body language experts and political commentators offering countless theories about the nature of their relationship. The documentary does provide some glimpses into how they interact, though perhaps not as many as those interested in the topic might hope for. The portrait that emerges is one of a couple who maintain somewhat separate spheres within their shared life. One observer compared their arrangement to that of a Tudor-era king and queen, each maintaining their own court and areas of influence within the palace, occasionally coming together for ceremonial purposes or public displays of unity. They're shown holding hands and walking together at various points, but these moments feel staged for the cameras rather than spontaneous displays of affection. There's a particularly revealing scene where Melania enters a room where Donald Trump is practicing his inauguration speech. He's working through his remarks when he declares, "I'm going to be a peacemaker." Melania chimes in with a suggestion, adding an unifier. Trump's initial reaction appears somewhat annoyed, and he makes a comment about not recording this moment, acknowledging that his wife has given him a good idea. He does indeed incorporate the word unifier into his actual inauguration speech and afterward turns to look at Melania as if to say he included it for her. Given subsequent events during his second term, the inclusion of unifier in his rhetoric carries a certain irony that won't be lost on viewers. In another exchange captured on camera, Trump makes a comment about his wife, saying she's very difficult, but quickly adding that there's no one like her. It's the kind of backhanded compliment that reveals both affection and frustration, though without additional context, it's hard to know exactly what he means. What does come across clearly is that Melania maintains a certain reserve and distance even from her husband. She holds herself back, never fully revealing her inner thoughts or feelings to the camera. This reserved quality, this ability to remain somewhat enigmatic and unreachable, may well be part of what has made her marriage to Trump the longest-lasting of his 3 marriages. Her taciturn and contained nature stands in stark contrast to his bombastic personality. The documentary also features appearances by other members of the Trump family, including their son, Barron. However, his presence in the film has been compared unfavorably to the television series Succession, with one reviewer suggesting it plays like the worst episode of that show, with all the jokes removed. Barron lurks in the background of various scenes, drawing comparisons to the character of Cousin Greg from the HBO series. He's described as having a moon-faced quality and demonstrating an understanding of how to work a crowd, but he doesn't feature prominently, enough to provide substantial insight into his personality or his relationship with his parents. One of the more interesting segments involves a video call between Melania and Brigitte Macron, the First Lady of France. The exchange offers a glimpse into the dynamics between First Ladies of different nations and the diplomatic niceties that govern their interactions. Watching Brigitte Macron speak to Melania, one gets the impression that regardless of any personal feelings or political disagreements she might harbour, she understands the importance of maintaining cordial relations with America's First Lady. Her comments about how wonderful it is that Melania is back in the White House come across as the kind of diplomatic pleasantries that are expected in such situations, even if they may not reflect her genuine sentiments. It's a small moment, but it does provide some insight into the political theatre that First Ladies must navigate. The film's reception at actual cinema screenings has been underwhelming. Reports from London, where the documentary received a limited theatrical release, indicate sparse attendance even at prime screening times. At one afternoon showing, only 10 to 12 people were present in the theatre. While this was a midday weekday screening, which naturally draws smaller crowds than evening or weekend showings, the low attendance numbers suggest limited public interest in seeing the film on the big screen. There was speculation that some of those in attendance might have been journalists assigned to review the film rather than genuine paying customers seeking entertainment. The overall critical consensus appears to be that while the documentary may satisfy extreme completists or those with an intense fascination with every detail of Melania Trump's life, it offers little to recommend it to general audiences. The film fails to answer the questions that make Melania such an intriguing figure in the first place. Why did she marry Donald Trump? What does she really think about his political career and rhetoric? How does she reconcile her carefully cultivated image with her husband's controversial statements and policies? What are her genuine beliefs and values beyond surface-level observations about her love of fashion and luxury goods? None of these questions are meaningfully addressed. Instead, viewers get exactly what the documentary's title promises in the most literal sense possible. Melania. Just Melania, doing Melania things, without context, without depth, without revelation. It's a surface-level portrait of a woman who has spent years perfecting the art of revealing nothing while constantly being in the public eye. In that sense, perhaps the documentary is actually the perfect representation of its subject. Beautiful, polished, expensive-looking, and ultimately empty of substance. For those considering whether to spend money on a cinema ticket, the advice from those who have seen it is clear. Restraint is recommended. The trailer may spark curiosity, but that curiosity is unlikely to be satisfied by the actual film. Unless the sight of someone selecting fine china or adjusting accessories constitutes compelling viewing. This is probably one to skip, or at least wait until it's available for home streaming, where the financial and time investment is considerably less significant. The production history of the Melania Trump documentary reveals a project marked by controversy, significant financial investment, and serious behind-the-scenes turmoil, that ultimately led to an unprecedented number of crew members requesting their names be removed from the final credits. According to investigative reporting, the troubled production tells a story quite different from the polished image presented in the finished film. Amazon's acquisition of the documentary represents the streaming giant's largest financial commitment to any single piece of content in its history. The company paid $40 million for the licensing rights to the film, a staggering sum that dwarfs typical documentary deals. To put this in perspective, the next closest bid came from Disney, which offered just $14 million, less than half of Amazon's offer and still triple what most documentaries command. Netflix and Apple, both major players in the streaming documentary space, declined to bid on the project at all, suggesting they saw little commercial value in the content, despite Melania Trump's high profile. Of that $40 million licensing fee, Melania Trump herself walks away with $28 million, representing 70% of the total amount. This personal windfall has raised questions about conflicts of interest and the ethics of a sitting First Lady entering into such lucrative commercial arrangements with one of the world's wealthiest individuals. Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder and the third richest person globally, also owns The Washington Post, adding another layer of complexity to the relationship between the Trump administration and this particular business deal. The financial arrangements came about through a direct pitch from Melania to Bezos during a personal dinner meeting. Just 2 weeks after that dinner, Amazon made its $40 million offer. The speed of the deal and the extraordinary sum involved have prompted scrutiny about whether this represents a straightforward business transaction or something more complicated given the political dynamics involved. An Amazon spokesperson has defended the acquisition by stating that the company licensed the film for one simple reason: because they believe customers will love it and want to watch it. However, early box office projections tell a very different story about customer interest. Industry analysts estimate that the film will earn between just $1 and $5 million during its opening week, despite being released in 2,000 theaters across the United States. These numbers represent a catastrophic return on investment, particularly when considering that Amazon didn't stop at the $40 million acquisition cost. The company reportedly spent an additional $35 million on promotional efforts, bringing the total investment to $75 million before accounting for any other production or distribution costs. The promotional budget alone is remarkable for a documentary. $75 million in combined acquisition and marketing costs exceeds the promotional spending for most major documentaries, including Taylor Swift's massively successful Eras Tour film. Amazon purchased expensive advertising slots during NFL games, created custom popcorn buckets for theaters, and launched a comprehensive marketing campaign designed to drive audience interest. Despite these efforts, social media users posted screenshots in the days leading up to the premiere, showing theaters with scores of unsold seats, even in traditionally Republican-leaning states like Florida and Georgia, where one might expect stronger interest in a film about a Republican First Lady. The production itself required coordination across 3 separate crews working in 3 different cities: Florida, Washington, D.C., and New York. Each crew included world-class cinematographers and experienced production staff. However, keeping pace with the First Lady and her security detail proved to be a logistical nightmare. The security requirements and scheduling constraints created constant challenges for the production teams trying to capture footage while working around the restrictions inherent in filming a protected government official. According to reports from multiple crew members who spoke to journalists, the working conditions were extremely difficult. Staff described being worked excessively hard with very long hours in a highly disorganized and chaotic environment. The production lacked the structure and planning typically associated with professional documentary filmmaking, leading to frustration and exhaustion among the crew. What made these difficult conditions particularly galling for many workers was that the chaos apparently had less to do with the challenges of filming the First Lady and more to do with the behavior of the director. Brett Ratner, best known for directing the Rush Hour film franchise, was making his first film since 6 women publicly accused him of sexual harassment and assault in 2017. For many crew members, working with Ratner became the most difficult aspect of an already challenging production. Multiple staff members told reporters that they felt uncomfortable with what they perceived as the propaganda elements of the documentary, but that Ratner's presence and behavior represented the worst part of the entire experience. Crew members described a director who showed little respect for the people working under him or for basic professional standards on set. Ratner allegedly left a trail of litter wherever he went, discarding orange peels, gum wrappers and other trash without regard for the crew members who would have to clean up after him. One crew member recounted witnessing Ratner chew a piece of gum and casually throw it into a coffee cup sitting on their equipment cart without even acknowledging the crew member's existence or making eye contact. The dismissive nature of this behavior, treating crew members as essentially invisible, exemplified the lack of respect that characterized his approach to the production. The lunch break situation became another major source of tension. Professional film productions are governed by strict rules about meal breaks, both for legal reasons and to maintain crew morale and energy. However, Ratner allegedly showed consistent disregard for these requirements. One particularly egregious incident occurred during an extended shooting day in a location where food was not permitted due to security or venue restrictions. The war, crew prohibited from eating and working for hours beyond their scheduled lunch break was reportedly starving by late in the day. Ratner, however, apparently broke the no-food rule for himself, serving himself a meal and eating it in full view of the hungry crew who were not permitted to do the same. A crew member described watching Ratner eat his food in what they characterized as the grubbiest way possible, licking his fingers while the staff around him went without meals. Whether this behavior was unknowing or deliberately malicious remains unclear, but the impact on crew morale was significant. Being forced to watch someone in a position of authority flagrantly violate rules that everyone else had to follow, particularly when it involved something as basic as eating when hungry, created understandable resentment. The end result of these working conditions was that approximately 2/3 of the crew requested that their names not appear in the film's credits. This is an extraordinary situation in the film industry. While it's not unheard of for individuals to request credit removal, having the majority of a production crew make this request is virtually unprecedented. Film credits represent professional recognition, career advancement, and proof of work for future employment opportunities. For crew members to voluntarily forgo these benefits speaks to how strongly they wanted to distance themselves from the project. The 104-minute finished film represents the work of these 3 separate production teams, but many of those who contributed to creating it want no public association with the final product. The decision to remove credits appears to stem from a combination of factors: discomfort with the political nature of the project, unhappiness with the working conditions, and particularly the experience of working under Brett Ratner's direction. Interestingly, while crew members had overwhelmingly negative things to say about Ratner and the production process, their comments about Melania Trump herself were largely positive. Multiple staff members described her as friendly, engaged with the project, and professional in her interactions with the crew. One insider specifically noted that she was totally nice and represented the opposite of Brett Ratner in terms of how she treated the people working on the film. This suggests that whatever the documentary's shortcomings, they cannot be attributed to difficult behavior from its subject. Ratner's relationship with the Trump family appears to have strengthened considerably during and after the production. Reports indicate that he is currently living in a villa at Mar-a-Lago, the Trump family's Florida resort and the former president's primary residence. Even more curiously, he is said to be continuing to film Melania for reasons that remain unclear. Whether this means there are plans for additional documentary content, a sequel, or simply that he is gathering footage for potential future use is unknown. The entire saga of the Melania documentary production represents a case study in how not to make a film. From the controversial director to the poor working conditions, from the astronomical financial investment to the dismal projected returns, from the mass crew credit removals to the empty theatre seats, nearly every aspect of the project has been marked by problems. Amazon's gamble that audiences would flock to see an intimate portrait of Melania Trump appears to have failed spectacularly, raising questions about the decision-making process that led to such an enormous financial commitment for a project with such limited appeal. The contrast between the money invested and the audience interest generated suggests a fundamental miscalculation about public appetite for this particular content. Whether this represents an honest mistake in judgment, or whether other factors influence the decision to pay such an extraordinary sum for the rights remains a subject of speculation and scrutiny.